Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers. I'm Peter Rave, and this will be the only time you'll see me in a one-shot. Here with me, as always, is my team. We've got none other than Brett.
Hey.
We've got Drew.
Hey.
And we've got Patrick.
Hello.
We're here to talk about music, and of course, the bringer of the music this week, the provider, the sharer this week, is none other than Brett. Brett, what do you got for us this week?
We got the 2003 release by The Strokes, Room on Fire, the album that came off the heels of one of the most critically acclaimed albums of the first decade of the millennium, and other lists that are more hyperbolistic than that even. Critically acclaimed. Hit number 4 on Billboard 200, certified gold, etc.
Yeah. Drew, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
Well, I knew some of the Strokes stuff. As Brett said, the Strokes were pretty well critically acclaimed. They got some good radio airplay on the alt rock station around me, 88.9. The Alternation. And also one of the songs on this album was on Guitar Hero, which I think everybody my age played way too much of. So I sort of had expectations. And we'll go into whether my worries were founded or not.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what were your expectations coming into this album?
In the early 2000s, there was this weird 60s garage rock revival where there was 10 bands called the something or others, and the Strokes were kind of the first of them. They were the one that started it, and I'll blame them for it. We've used it before with the White Stripes, sort of came out of that same scene, although they're stylistically a little different. And there was just this series of bands that thought they were the goddamn Kinks, and they're not. So yeah.
So Brett, how would you describe the themes and elements of this record?
All right, let me break it down. Lyrically, there are things that I really enjoy about the way that they write their lyrics, that stray away from other bands of the genre. You'd be pretty hard pressed to find a song that has lyrically is full of self-loathing or some existential mope fest. They tend to write songs about being sick of somebody, most likely a woman, doing the dirty work of telling somebody they're not interested in them, less of the baby ran away on me, let me cry about it. But I'm not a lyrics guy. Vocally, this is of the genre that sort of jumped on, and not exactly in the same way, to have the style that the vocals use. The vocals in the Strokes are used kind of like an overdrive guitar. Mr. Casablancas controls the breakup using the volume of his voice through the microphone, and it adds a little bit of dynamics. It doesn't straight up sound like a broken speaker all the time, because there are times when he could put less vocals into it, but when he does break up, it adds some kind of separation between the guitars and the bass, so you can actually hear. This is an album where you can hear, the guitars do a good job of staying off of each other's toes in the mix, and normally you would have the vocals being somewhere in between the guitars and the bass in the mix, but with having a certain kind of overdrive to the vocals, you can sort of hear everything that's going on. The bass on this album is pretty much. It's not the most. It's not straight up carrying the root around, but it is. It's not much more than that. But these are fairly simple songs. The bass does carry the low frequencies, and does lay the foundation, because the guitars tend to do other things. The guitars tend not to carry the progression. The bass does. The guitars tend to be doing something, either doing a lead, or doing an off key, or not off key, but off the root, not main. It's not following every root with a power chord. The bass is laying that down, and overall, I have to say this band has the most rock and roll names of its members. Julian Casablancas, Albert Hammond Jr., Nick Valenci, Nikolai Frazier, and Fabrizio Moretti. You can't make that shit up, kids.
Yeah.
It's the most ridiculous name, like prep school kid band ever.
Yeah.
Naming after a deodorizer. That's
Nice. Fabrizio. Drew, what would be the themes and elements that caught your attention?
As I alluded to, in the A block, I was worried. Because when I remember hearing them on the radio and such when I was a kid, when I was a teen, I guess, I didn't really get it. And I still don't, I guess. For all the reasons Brett actually said that he enjoys this music are the reasons I found that I just couldn't find myself like having fun with any part of this record. The whole thing, from the vocals down, sounds like it's trying to be cool. Like it sounds like though it's like trying really hard to be like a cool dude. The vocals are aloof. They almost sound like they're falling out of his mouth. They're so nonchalant most of the time. And like Brett was saying, it has that like overdriven quality to it where the vocals are thick but without much like tone to them, I feel like. And that was not great to me. The guitars are crunchy. There's some cool sounds there, but it's thick. They're just overdriven. They're crunchy, and it sounds like they're going for that lo-fi garage rock sound. We're in a day and age where the garage rock sound was because that's all that you had access to. We're in a day and age where that's not really the case anymore. You can care about your tone. You can try something harder. The lo-fi sound is the lo-fi overdriven, crunchy, like overly thick sort of guitar tone that I felt they were getting was a stylistic choice and one that I just didn't care for. It's that too cool for school, like rock star feel to them. The weird part is that the flashes where I enjoyed myself were actually in a couple of tracks on the bass, which is the part that Brett just sort of signed off on. Because the tone that they got in the bass was something that was this like really cool, hollow, deeper sound. So when the bass,
I'm gonna let you finish.
Okay.
I will talk about I will further talk about the bass. I was not writing the bass off.
Okay. But that was
bassist? That's a bassist statement right there. I'm not.
Look, we're so used to being written off that as soon as anybody says something weird, I automatically get defensive about bass. It is in my nature.
Bassist.
That being said,
we talking about bassists.
yes. Yeah. But yeah, anything else, Drew? You want to finish any last thoughts?
I'm letting you.
No,
Sorry.
that was pretty much it.
All right.
He said he was going to let me finish, but I was pretty much finished.
Okay. Patrick, what themes and elements caught your attention?
So I'm gonna start with the things I liked. The interplay between the guitars is great. They're, as Brett kind of said, somebody's usually doing a lead, somebody's usually doing something else, and it works really well together. The bass is good. The bass, it drives, it works in the way a bass player in a three-piece punk band works. You got to play you got to drive the song, you got to be there so everyone else can do their thing on top. The drums were adequate, but I don't mean that in necessarily a bad way, but they're adequate in the way Ringo was adequate. Like, not really any flourish, not really anything exciting, but it worked. But someone decided in 2003 to record vocals with a Play School tape recorder from 1988. And Jesus Christ, if you want to distort vocals, Call Melissa Cross. You live in New York City and your dad's made of money, and have her teach you how to fucking scream. It's not hard. You can learn how to do it without damaging your voice. It's a thing. Like, don't just turn up the fucking gain on the microphone and shove it down your throat. It drove me crazy the entire album that the vocals sounded like garbage. Purposefully. This was an album made with label money. This was an album that they could record wherever they want with a guy who fucking produced, Radiohead records, who I have mixed feelings about, but at least know how to make an album sound good. And the guitars sounded fantastic. The bass sounded nice, if a little, snappy 60s, which isn't my style, but it sounded nice. The drums were a little spotty and the vocals sounded like a bathroom on a Play School tape recorder, and it drove me crazy. It's the dumbest aesthetic for music, and it kind of ruins them for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that it is definitely an affectation doing the lo-fi thing. It's something I think we talked about on the show before. But yeah, Brett.
I'm going to disagree. I don't think that it is a lo-fi thing. Because yes, the vocals are done through a way that as you put more punch to them, they do distort, but there are still times when the vocals are clear. It's not like some bands where it's constantly, that is the vocal tone of it. And also, there's some fucking tone from those guitars that is as clean as can be.
Yeah, the guitars sound
some Strat through a deluxe reverb. There is some no lo-fi of, if by lo-fi you mean a couple of guys with a stomp box and an old tube amp, it's lo-fi. But I think that part of the things that make it sonically separate to let you be able to hear stuff is the fact that there's not such a muddying of the mix. And yeah, it's different. And it's something that the subculture around it has sort of latched onto and done way worse. But in 2003, there weren't a whole lot of people that were doing this stuff. And it's not necessarily that somebody wants to scream. It's that somebody wants to play with the dynamics of how you use a microphone. And yeah, they could do things other ways. But, when it comes to selling albums that are critically, well done and they have a good following, I don't think they've done anything wrong. I think that they just did something that's different.
I will admit that I'm not cool. Like, I will admit to that. Like, I don't fucking get it. Like, I've admitted to that before. Yes, this is a very critically acclaimed album. I don't see why. But I'll admit I'm not cool. Like, fucking skinny as this, wearing this jersey. Like, I'll admit to this. Like, that's fucking fun.
Yeah. But yeah, Brett, what would be some of the key tracks to zero in on?
Okay, well, being not cool as well. I'm way more not cooler than you, Drew. We're gonna have a not cool off. But Reptilia, this is the song of the album for me. I enjoy the way the guitars and the bass do their part in the separation. There's they get a ton of mileage just by pulling a couple instruments out of the track and then throwing them back in. They even do like rolling the volume knob up to the point where they get a little bit of feedback. They do a little bit of dynamic tricks that don't take a whole lot. They just take a guitar, a stomp box, and a tube amp. And the guitar lick that's played under the chorus is it's kind of fun to play. Disclosure: this is a song that I play all the time. But the bass is really what makes this song. The bass gives the platform for the guitars to be able to do different things, and a chance to cut through the mix, because it again is the basis of the entire groove. The guitars are off doing their own things off on different levels, where the bass is carrying the actual song, the progression. The song "Automatic Stop," I really like the layering of the different voicings, from the jangle guitar on the off stroke, the bass hanging out where rhythm guitars normally do, and the lead coming in really, really hot, but it not overstating, but it does what it wants to do in a way, because this whole album is all about people that are way more skilled at playing these instruments than what is actually being put on the record. But there is a beauty to the simplicity of a lot of this stuff, that they don't have to do all. It's not about maximum music per second, but which I kind of enjoy that stuff too. But this album is not where this shines. And then the track "The End Has No End." This is it has a tone that I assume is a wah pedal that you stick at, like, you leave it and you stick it to color the tone for that repeating guitar lick. And while the second guitar plays a simple alternating line, and again the bass does what the bass is good at. I like these 3 songs. There are other songs that do some neat stuff. There's songs in there where they use a guitar as a synth. There's some stuff in there, but I think if those 3 songs, you listen to them, you sort of get a taste for what the album has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks that caught your attention?
Like you said, I'm gonna talk about Reptilia because that bass though. There's just a cool groove to it. And it was really fun. And this was, like Brett said, I think the high point of the record for me. But I would be missed if I didn't mention the fact that as the bass player, playing these songs on Guitar Hero and having to actually do chords, fuck that noise. I will always have bad memories of colored notes coming at me with this song because I'm so my fingers don't make chords. They move chords. That, like, moving my, it's not all good. Automatic Stop. The music, the tone, it like started coming out from the beginning was really, really cool. But the vocal tone to me stomped on this track a lot. And this was sort of the poster child for the a bit too close to the mic to make the vocals sort of overdriven thing that I just did not dig about this record. And it sort of was an infuriating point to me because I was like, oh my gosh, this had a chance to be really good. And then nothing. And on the opposite end of that was 2051, where I feel like it was the vocals weren't too close. They weren't super loud, but they sort of had this like thick, almost like fuzz to them that filled the space, but you could barely hear what the vocals were doing because they were sort of put lower in the mix, which was super weird to me. But the keyboard like effect was really, really close to making this like super, super cool to me, but I kept losing because I was trying to hear things that I felt that I should be hearing more of, and I wasn't. And then Under Control was kind of the one that like that one felt like it was that garage rock revival thing that like they sort of spawned. And it was just, that's the thing that was annoying to me about them and some of their contemporaries and the indie rock, garage rock scene. And that was sort of the poster child for it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Disregarding the vocals, there are a couple of songs I liked. Reptilia, it's got a great bass opening. It's dead simple, but it works. And I really, really like the guitars on that. They work so well together that it's hard to ignore that. And 1251, I liked the way the guitar melody was matched the vocal melody. It worked. It was a nice sounding song. And it had the vocals were a little less horrific at moments, but I still like it. I'm so bothered by it as a decision that was made to do on the entire record that it like they're clipped, they're EQ'd into this weird little pocket, and it ruins what is otherwise 4 other good musicians in the band for me. Because, everyone else is doing their part and doing it well. I just hate the vocals, and it's inexcusable in 2003 to sound like garbage.
In 1997, garbage sound. Son.
God damn it!
Oh, sorry.
God damn it!
Sorry,
God
didn't
damn
mean. Sorry, I'm sorry. I will make it up to you. I am sorry. I did not mean to take the wind from your sails, brother. Sorry.
I was gonna make a garbage usually sounds like a female and very pretty, but god damn it.
I'm
Surely
sorry.
sad that you did not make that joke.
I was gonna make it earlier, but then like you kept talking and I was like, damn it, I don't want to interrupt him. He's making points. Like,
You can always interrupt me to make jokes about the band Garbage.
Yes. But yeah, let's bring it back around the horn for some conclusive thoughts. Drew, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this record?
I've been known to be wrong, and that's fine. I was obviously wrong on my last pick, and I'm ready to be wrong here. But this, the Strokes and the sort of indie garage rock thing that the Strokes sort of were part of the beginnings of, I just don't get it. I know that there's a lot there for the people who do get it, so I'm not disparaging them in any way, because obviously there are a lot of critics that agree that this album is great. So it's one of those things where your mileage obviously may vary. I did not dig this. This was not really my cup of tea per se. And it mostly stems from the thing Swire kept griping on, which was the weird choice in like the vocals. And that's just what it was for me. There was solid parts from every musician in certain parts that made me think, oh wow, okay, they get it. They're musicians. They know what they're doing. But the stylistic choice for me just took me out of it.
Patrick, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album?
I'm thinking back to 2003 because I remember that. In 2003, this is what I imagine is the reason the White Strokes, Hives, Vines happened. Like that thing happened because in 2003, anyone who wrote for a music publication was so fucking sick of the era of pop music that we were in, like the midst of. Like it was all Britney Spears, NSYNC, like
Blink-182, the Sum 41.
But we'll get that too. But everything that was popular was hyper produced, or the remnants of pop punk that was Blink-182 and Sum 41 and Simple Plan and all that,
and still is.
Yeah, and I guess in that context, you would latch onto a band like this that was just making rock and roll music. But maybe because it was overplayed, maybe because so everyone knocked Tool for being pretentious. Can we talk about how fucking pretentious it is for a bunch of boarding school kids to make a 60s revival band?
They're not responsible for the education or the upbringing that they got. Musicians don't get to choose that, or the fact that they were classically trained in their instruments. How dare they be good at them?
No, it's not about them being good at them. It's like it feels like everything everyone talks shit about Brooklyn right now. And that whole like hipster thing, this is just hipster 12 years ago. Like this is hipster 12 years ago. It is, I'm so cool, I'm gonna turn myself into 1964 and fuck you, and like it's.
I don't think anybody in 1964 was playing some of the like. I have to disagree with some of this stuff, but you are entitled to your opinion.
Yeah, it's an opinion.
I think that they are not responsible for the genre of music that people put them in. Because I bet if you talk to them, they do not think of themselves as an indie rock band, because there's no reason to think of them as an indie rock band.
They want to be the Kinks.
No, they don't. Who wants to be the also ran of the yeah? No, I think they just had some songs and they wanted a style that would separate themselves. I think that everything they do in this album, from the way that they layer the tracks they write, they compose, is way better than anything that a lot of bands in the 60s that are popular were doing, and a much simpler way that is way more earwormy and can also sell records, which is what you do when you make an album, especially a sophomore outing. like this one, where they had to follow up what many people put on the best album ever list in This Is It, which,
People
you know,
really think
whether or
that's
not,
the best album ever?
but no,
No,
in
the
a
one before
list.
this.
They put it in a list. I'm not saying I do. I'm just saying that I like the fact that this is the second outing with this band. They were able to do something. Now, mind you, today, if you went and listened to more modern stuff that they have done, they stray away from some things because some things went out of vogue. Flea doesn't play slap anymore because that got old and tired. Because you know the people shift and move. But these are like people that were song crafters. That knew what they were doing, whether the production end or like, you know, I'm a guy who listens to a band that many people write off just because of the lyrics. Rush. Those guys are great. They have lyrics that are very, you know, divisive. I can still find things in there to pick out outside of the vocals in the Strokes that I think doesn't lead to straight blaming people being pretentious. I think that's just people doing things that other people didn't do. And just because people do it afterward, you can't blame them for, you know, bringing it in. Just like I can't blame the White Stripes for everything that I wish I could.
Yeah. But yeah, any more conclusive thoughts about the album, Brett?
No, not really. I mean, if you want to listen to a rock band, this is a rock band. They do some stuff in it. It's pretty tightly produced. They said that if they had a couple more weeks, they could do a lot better. But I think, you know, for the fact that this album came out and did as well as it did at the time that it did, which in 2003 the music industry was going down in flames, they did pretty okay and are still able to be the same band and do things differently, I think is important. But, you know, you'll be hard not to have listened to some of this album. You probably already have opinions, but I think if you listen to it again, you can listen to sort of the nuances inside the album and sort of draw from that what I was trying to bring to the table.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that those are our conclusions. Now we go to the main event of the evening. Like I say every week, our haiku reviews. You know, sum it all up in some poems. Drew, what is your haiku?
I guess I'm just the most uncool in the room. Don't really get it.
I'll throw mine in the middle. Sets their sound apart and does so unflinchingly, for better or worse. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Contrived garage rock, recorded in a bathroom, cannibalism.
And Brett, what is your haiku?
Refrigerate? No. They're not quite lo-fi. Beauty and simplicity, straight up rock music.
Mm-hmm. And that wraps up our thoughts on the Strokes. You can, of course, find this album on our Spotify playlist. We keep track, you know, let you play Record Breakers, the home game. Also on that playlist, presumably so, is going to be next week's pick, and that is provided by none other than Drew. Drew, what do you got for us this week? Or next week?
Well, next week we're taking quite a different shift. Going back to the 90s, 1998, I believe this record was. Band called Lagwagon from California with their song Let's Talk About Feelings.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about feelings, but let's do it next week. Yeah.
Talking about you and me.
We'll do it next week, and certainly not in just a few minutes, but next week.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this hat around. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, the show's not over.
I'm sure I won't be wearing this jersey.
Drew does 14 wardrobe changes during the award ceremony.
Yes.
How does he do it?
Yes. But that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode of Record Breakers. You can find us all over the internet. Patrick is at Swagger. Brett is at Hibbity Berbert, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at X2 I'm at PD Rave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. recordbreakerspodcast@gmail.com. Email us with thoughts and questions and concerns and complaints.
And emu us too. I want an
Yes.
emu.
Yes. Check us out on iTunes, Stitcher. Give us reviews on there as well. Give us, some positive reviews, hopefully.
Give us any reviews.
Yeah, any. Just do the things. Subscribe, like, share. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
The space horse rides again.